Good morning, Adelaide. My name is Con and I am the Conversationalist. My drink of choice is my latte as always, and due to the weather, which we do need the rain, the salubrious studios have moved indoors for the first time here at Clarence Gardens. This morning, my guest is Kate Mason. Kate is a personality coach, and Kate became interested in personalities over 30 years ago when she read a book called Personality Plus about temperaments and discovered the reason why she and her husband were constantly fighting. There's something different, totally opposite temperaments. Kate has used this knowledge within her family to gain perspective of how they see things. And once discovering the Myers-Briggs type indicator test and filling in the gaps, Kate was committed to making this available to everyone, parents, partner relationships, and small business, as it is a very expensive business tool. Kate also uses the 5 love languages as part of her workshop portfolio. Kate was a primary school teacher for 13 years and together with her husband have owned and currently operate multiple swimming centre. So there's a fair bit of business acumen to go along with her teaching. However, teaching people how to understand themselves and others is her passion. Good morning, Kate. How are you?
Good morning, Con. I'm really well, thank you. Bit cold, but good.
Fantastic. Well, the weather certainly has changed, hasn't it? And unfortunately, we're going to get a little bit more of this cold weather. Kate, I'm interested. You've obviously got a very diverse portfolio there with the personalities and indeed the swimming. What I do want to focus on this morning certainly is your training and your teaching surrounding understanding temperaments. Tell me, once you had discovered this and you read that book, how did it actually help you in terms of your relationship? Did it stop the fighting, or did it just help you to understand why you fought?
Well, what it did was when you first fall in love with someone, as you all well know, it's all wonderful usually, and you do things that the other person asks you to do because you're in love with them, and you might do things that you might never really do if it was just you by yourself. So what happens over the years, and as Love Languages points out too, is that initial in-love phase disappears, and then there becomes the love phase. And in that love phase, all of a sudden you start switching off all those things you were doing just because you were in love with them, and you start going back to who you really are, and you start being who you are. And often that is the time that people break up, because it's not a reality for them and they're not really what they started initially going out with. Now, my husband and I were 6 years down the track by the time we got married. And what happened with us was that we were constantly fighting because we were just disagreeing on everything. So I'm a very social person. I love going out. I love having groups of friends around. And he's very much a business doer person. He likes to get things done and he likes to do them immediately. Now, it was quite frustrating. He's also an introvert. So I was stressing him out because I was organising tours every weekend and he was coming home from work and couldn't handle it. So we were just arguing. So all of a sudden I read a book. Now, I unfortunately don't have the actual Personality Plus book that I read. This one's for work. And what we discovered was we were being 2 totally opposite personality temperaments, that he didn't see the world in any way near the way I saw the world. I saw the world so differently that we were clashing, and it was just really obvious. So we actually sat down and went, well, the things I fell in love with you about are all those things that are annoying me now. So what are we going to do about it? So we decided at that time that we would just embrace it, because it was actually something that was very different from who we are, but it was really filled in all those gaps. And it was really a great thing to have in our lives, because we actually complement each other, because we are so different. So what we do is try and concentrate on all the good things. But no, it doesn't mean you to stop fighting. It just means that when you look at each other and you actually understand it, you realize where that fight is coming from and you can actually solve it.
Okay. It's interesting you say that about the in love and then love phase. I'm not sure if you're aware of Dr. John DeMartini's work, but he talks about at a different level. He talks about infatuation, and then it's the things that you're infatuated about and cause you to fall in love with that ultimately are the things that you then start to hate about that person. So it's quite ironic and such a transition. Look, Myers-Briggs, I've heard of it, and I've done the personality test some years ago. I can't remember what personality I am. Depending on who you ask, I'm sure they'll have a different version of what they think I am.
Yeah.
But I know it is very expensive. I'm curious, what have you done? I know you're quite passionate about making it available to a broader range. How have you done that? Is it a simplified version? What have you done?
So what I've done is, look, I did the Myers-Briggs about probably 14, 15 years ago. And I did it as part of working with our business people that we have, with the staff that we have in our businesses. And when I came away from it, I just thought, this isn't just for business. This is actually a tool that every single person can use in their lives. So you can use it parenting, you can use it with your friends, you can use it in your businesses. And the thing about it is really an expensive tool, and most big businesses use it and they spend a lot of time using it. But a lot of people that actually have, I've asked people like you, I've said, so what is your profile? When they come out of it and they go, oh, I can't remember. And they start fossicking in their drawers, in their filing cabinet drawers to find it. My thing is that I really wanted to impact it more on a human level. So I actually wanted people to understand who they were first and get an idea around their type, and then look at how that applies to all of the things in their life, including business. And so what I do after all these years, I've kind of worked out a way of doing it so that you don't actually have to use the indicator, which is their, and they don't call it a test, because seriously, sometimes I've had people in my workshops who refuse to do it because they don't want to be right or wrong. So it's called an indicator because it's a psychological instrument, and it's balanced so that people aren't right or wrong. It's not supposed to give a right or wrong answer. So therefore, what I do is I talk it through with most people, because I've actually had it in my life for so long. I have so many real life examples of how it happens and how to use it, that I facilitate that in my workshops. So I cut out a whole lot of expense by not using the indicator. So I've found in all the workshops that I've run, there are rarely, after I've talked it through, there's rarely anyone who cannot decide what type they actually are. So when I run a workshop now, I don't use that. I just use all my knowledge and I put people into groups and we do fun stuff. And most people come away going, oh my goodness, this is me. I totally get this. So the thing about type and temperament is temperament talks about your behaviours. So it talks about whether you're angry, sad, grumpy, whatever. Whereas type just looks about how you get your energy, how you interact in the world, how you like to structure your world, and what kind of thinker you are. So it doesn't actually label you with any behaviours. However, temperament and type both mix really well. There's a whole centerpiece in the middle there where they overlap. And so the importance of knowing both is really essential for people to understand themselves and other people. And don't get me wrong, we're all unique. We've all had different upbringings. We've all got different quirks and different things that we do. But these things are tools that I just look at and I go, if all these people knew about this stuff, I think that your relationships with everybody in your life would be so much better.
No doubt. And I take a really interesting point about the terminology test equals right or wrong. I'm actually speaking with a client at the moment who's had to do a psych test for part of a job application. And the comment she made to me, she said, I don't know if I answered right or wrong. So it's really interesting that the terminology that's used around whether it's a test or an evaluation or whatever it is, that there's a connotation of right or wrong, and that's really, really interesting.
The thing is that there may be other personality tests out there that are right or wrong, but I would never use Myers-Briggs is not supposed to be used as a test, as a psychological test to determine whether someone's going to be good at their job. Because the thing is that I've got a daughter and a son, and my son's an introvert, my daughter's an extrovert, and they both work for us in our swim schools on reception. Now, Cass is the extrovert, they worked at different pools, and the managers told us that they did really good jobs, so we're just assuming that hopefully was the truth. However, my son is an excellent receptionist. He's great on reception. He's fabulous with people. He really enjoys it while he's there. And my daughter is too. But when he gets home, he says, oh, I'm so tired. That was really exhausting. And he needs to go off and re-energize by doing something quiet, some either gaming or whatever, be on his computer. Cass, on the other hand, comes home and says, oh my goodness, I've had such a good time at work today. I can hardly wait. And she goes out with her friends and she keeps re-energizing because she's an extrovert. Now, therefore, you can't judge when you do the Myers-Briggs as to how good a person is actually going to be at their job. So it's more to understand how their energy is and what exhausts them and how they interact in the world, rather than actually a judgment on them, because everybody can push themselves to be something else if they're really passionate about enough, you know.
I know you're in the process of writing a book regarding parenting, and I'm not. It's just with COVID-19, and my view is that we're kind of coming out of it a little bit, even though there's still a fair bit of isolation, and parents are stuck home with the kids, and the memes on Facebook are just endless. It's just to suggest they're humorous is an understatement. Give me some examples on how understanding personalities can help you not murder your kids, or B, want to lock them in and run out. Just give the viewers some practical tips,
Yep.
tips and some hope.
Sure. Look, the thing is that understanding extroversion, introversion, really important, because you might be an extroverted person like myself and have an introverted child, and you might be not giving them enough time to be alone, to get their energy. You might be at them all the time because you're not used to being at home with them all the time. And you might be an extrovert as well. And look, extroverts really need to get out sometimes. You know, it's just being out there in that world. And I'm not saying introverts don't, but extroverts do need that more. And if you are home with you're an introverted parent, you're home with an extroverted child, you're going to find they're probably in your face all the time and they're really annoying you, and you don't get your time or your space in that place. Now, the other thing that I was talking to Tammy about the other day is whether you're a person who really likes structure and order and everything to be in its place, and you like the day to run to a schedule, then tough times. Because really just don't, well, for a start, kids are kids. But the other thing is that we were discussing, you know, her family and what was happening there. And as you all know, Tammy loves organisation and structure.
Oh, yes,
She'd be
indeed.
admit it. And so for her, the lack of, she pops a structure there and it doesn't happen. And she said, it's really, really stressful. And I said, I get that. So I just gave her some tips on, you know, if you have a child, like I'm unstructured personality. I go with the flow. Structure stresses me. So I try not to put too much structure and rigid guidelines around my day, because I know that's not the way I'm going to work best. And that's what happens for the people who are, say, judging by Myers-Briggs. They love their structure. The other ones, they don't. They prefer easygoing flow. And the world works against, most of the time, people who like an easygoing flow, because you have to be on time for everything. You have to be at work on time, school on time. So this child, if you've got a child that's like that at home, then you can say to them, here's the work you have to do today. You choose the time frames and get it done. But I'm not going to, you know, judging people like to have it structured. So at 12, I want you to do this. At 3, I want you to do this. They're going to be banging their heads against a brick wall. However, usually if you give a person that's unstructured the job and give them a time frame that they can do it in, like you've got from 6 o'clock this morning until 12 o'clock at night, they'll get it done. Usually at the last minute, that they'll get it.
That's me.
So, you know, they're kind of things that I think, and especially when you're living so closely with everyone, and someone is a person that dumps stuff everywhere and the other person is a person that tidies up, you really need to have a conversation around it. We talk about it all the time. We've only got one person in the household, my son, poor child, who likes structure and order. And he finds us all very stressful to live with. But we've talked about it. We've talked about it for the last 10 years, and he gets it. And we have discussions on, look, if that's stressing you, all right, I'll try and change it. So, but I'm lucky. I've got older kids. I'm sitting here you know, not being awful to those people who have younger people. I really do feel for you. But I do think that if you do understand how your kids work and what's their best ways of doing it, then you've got a real handle on things. So I'll get my book out as fast as possible.
I look forward to that. Let's talk about kids. So at what age are these tools useful? Obviously, kids at a really, really young age, my grandson particularly at the moment is 2, and trying to rationalize with him is a bit like trying to rationalize with a terrorist, I think. And he's in his own little world, and he'll do what he does. At what point is there I know kids are, obviously everyone's an individual,
Yes.
but is there a guideline at what age these strategies or indeed these things are useful for, or not?
Well, I think that at the age of 3, I say to people that my son had the neatest toy cupboard in town, and it was set out really neatly. And in fact, I was really naughty. I used to go into his room sometimes, just move a few things just to see if he noticed. And he does. He did. He'd come out and go, "Who's moved my car?" Whatever. And I was fascinated because this is not me. This is not who I am. And I actually went back to my Personality Plus book and read about him. And he is a totally different temperament to my husband and I. So he's an organised temperament. He's a person that likes order, and we're not. So I actually parent to that need for order for him because he didn't know anything about it. Now, my daughter at the other side was who she is today, but a lesser way of being so. And sometimes it's not as obvious in some people. But I also am a great auntie to a little boy who does the same thing. He's very neat and organised and methodical, and you can see it right now. You can see it at that age. But a whole lot of the other things are not going to show until they're a lot older. And I used to run workshops with teenagers as the kids grew up, and a lot of recognition of who they are. They all want to be extroverts because it's cool to be in the group. You know, you want to be out there. And I used to have a whole lot of them come up after the workshops and say, "Actually, I'm an introvert." And I'd say, "I know that, honey. I get where you're at." But sometimes a need to be something else detracts them from knowing and understanding who they are. And so I think you can actually start quite early. If you start looking at things, you've got to look at behaviours, you've got to look at what they do. And certain things that set kids off, if you look at what's setting them off, then you might actually find that you can avoid arguments and things like that if you can manage to find out the cause.
It's interesting you say about your son at an early age. I just want to throw something at you regards my son, and if you watch this, Jonathan, and you better be, when Jonathan was when Jonathan was younger, at 2 and 3, 4, meticulous, absolutely meticulous. And the same thing, if you moved one of his stuffed toys or one of his cars, he knew and wanted to know, where is it, who moved it, why did you move it? My world can't function because you moved my car.
Yes.
As he got older and we got into the teenager phase, particularly middle to late teenager, his room was fundamentally a bomb site. Mm-hmm. And it was just to the point where you just shut the door and walk past. You didn't really want to look, and you couldn't bother having the conversation. Is that exhibiting a change of personality, or what is that? How do you attribute that change in this need at one point to be so structured and so organized to the point where I really don't care?
How old is he now?
31.
Okay. So
and mind you, he's married to a beautiful lady, Caitlin. I love my sister, my daughter-in-law. And Caitlin, I have no doubt that she now is the driving force in him being neat again, because obviously they've got to keep the house and kids and so on. But the transitional thing. So that's why I'm curious on your take on that.
Well, my take is teen years. Yeah. Floor robe, beautiful. Closing the door, those parents out there, because really, I think no matter whether they're neat or tidy, now Jack's mess is much neater than Sorry, Cass. But it is a neater mess. And I have similarly, my niece, her room used to be a tip. But when she left home, she's now tidy again. Now she's in a relationship and all the rest of it. It's like she's back to what she was, you know. And I think that if your son's more comfortable living in an orderly environment and he's actually quite happy to do that, and it's what's important to a person. See, to me, boys and a bedroom, it's not really that important. You know, like, I don't know, there are some boys that care about clothes and men, and that's wonderful. But there's a lot of them that just go, really, who cares? So sometimes you might need to look to refine that again in what he does for work, what he does, what he's passionate about. And then you might see this whole organised stage again in that person's life.
Okay. So what you're saying then is that their personality type isn't really changing. It's just really what's important to them at a particular time in their life. Is that how I'm reading this?
Yes. So look, I liken it to, I will never ever work in an office environment, because we first took over our first pool 35 years ago or whatever it was. I was school teaching, and I was also working on reception at our pool, and my mother was helping me with the accounts and the wages. And back then you wrote checks, and we had 40 people employed for us. So we had 40 checks to write, and we had all these pays to do. And my mum came in and took over it. She was a librarian. She loves that kind of stuff. And so we actually sent her to England for her 70th. And she put me, I was then in charge of the pays, and computers had just come out. They were massive. And I didn't know what to do. And I love my mum. She is the most organised person in my life. She had written click, green button to push this. And so I'm sitting, because I'm like, oh, God, no, this list is here. I can do this. So I'm following the list. And then somebody came into the office and they took my attention off the pays, and I chatted because I was relieved. Being locked away in an office was hell. So we chatted for about half an hour and then went away, and I overtaxed everybody. I put them all in the highest tax bracket and overtaxed everybody, and nobody spoke to me for weeks. And I came out of that and I said, I'm never doing that again, because that is not my strength. So my strength is on the desk, talking to people. I love people. But it is not organising and being organised. I've never, ever done the pays again. In fact, my mum only retired at 85 from doing all state swims, pays, all the rest of it, because she loved her job. So the thing is that if you're in a place that suits you, I can do that stuff, but I make a choice not to, because I know that it's not my thing, and it doesn't bring joy to my heart, and it doesn't do anything for me. So, you know, I think that it's what you care about that's really, really important. And if you're passionate about anything, you can do anything you want.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. Kate, I want to talk, before we go, the 5 love languages. Now, I've not, all disclosure here, I've not read the book. I've heard of it a number of times. Yeah. Can you give a brief overview of what the book is and how it helps you in your coaching and your programs for the viewers?
Yeah. So the 5 love languages, I'm sorry, I'm just currently looking. There's one for teenagers, by the way, guys, but all of those people, this was just help for me in my life. When I read this, unfortunately, my kids were at the end of their teen years. So I had to try and get in early, because it is really useful. And I've used this moving forward all the time. So Gary Chapman is a really great writer. Now look, a lot of these writers, the Personality Plus one and Gary, are quite religious. And if you're not a religious person, I always say to people, look, just don't pay attention to that part. If you are, wonderful. But if you're not, just read over, get what you need from the book. So he talks about the 5 different love languages that everybody has. So we've got acts of service, we've got gifts, we've got quality time, and physical touch, and and words of affirmation. So as a family or as a person, you often give to people the love language that you have. Now, my love language happens to be acts of service, and so is my husband's. So as long as we're both busy doing some little household thing, we're happy. We feel really well loved. If my husband gives me a gift, I go, don't really care about that. If he tells me how wonderful I am, I've got to admit, I do love that. That's pretty good. The other things like physical touch, hey, I can have a hug, but not really important. Quality time, no, I'd rather be out with as many people as I can as possible. So I discover that my son is quality time and physical touch. So he loves to sit over a cup of coffee. If I want to have quality time with my son, I take him out to a coffee shop and we can sit for hours because he's got my whole attention, quality time, give him big hugs. He loves all that. Cass, on the other hand, she's affirmations and gifts. So if I need to show her she's loved, then I affirm behaviours, and I try not to overdo it. Like, our whole society's been affirming for things that they shouldn't be affirming them for. So I try to look at the qualities that she has and all that, and affirm what is her core, the core person that she is. And gifts for those people don't need to be big gifts. She loves, as most of her friends will know, Diet Coke. And all I have to do is bring home a can or a bottle of Diet Coke and she feels loved. There's all of those things. So once you work that out, that saved me a lot of things, because I was busy tidying up their rooms and leaving their rooms neat and tidy and waiting for them to say, oh, thanks, Mum, you're the best. And never, ever did I get that. So once I recognised that that's not what happens, I explained it to them. And I said to them, I feel really loved when you tidy up your room. It makes so much difference to me. And believe me, they really make an effort. Every now and then I have to go, I feel a little bit unloved at the moment. And they'll go out there and they'll kick ass and they'll tidy the bedrooms. And I too will take a look at myself, because look, these things don't work all the time. You don't think about everything every day. Oh, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
But when you do use them, when you use these tools, the difference that it actually makes to your communication with everyone is amazing. So if you are home with a teenager or a child right now, I would be reading some of these books and just getting a handle on what's happening. Can I just do one more book that I love?
Of course you can. And look, Kate, what I will do in the post when I put this up on social media, I will list the books that we have spoken about. So for anybody that has watched so far and hasn't got the title or whatever, I will put it in. So continue, go on.
Yep.
That you had in your hand.
And it's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and how kids will talk, how to listen so kids will talk. And I know that you're all about listening, and so am I, with active listening and listening to people and really hearing them. And this book has been a real life changer for me, and I only read it about 6 weeks ago.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
I just think to myself, I'm practicing it all the time now. And I just think it's a really worthwhile book for anybody, including people that have kids, but for anybody on listening and how to understand listening and how to speak to the person that you've just heard. Really valuable. So yes, look, I've only read probably 4 books in my life, and they're all the 4 I'm talking about.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. Look, what I find quite interesting, you talking about listening, and I say to people quite often, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to use them in those proportions. And what people don't understand is that by listening, you can learn so much about the other person, and whether it's in your relationship or whether it's business, potential clients, the importance of giving them an opportunity to speak is just so beneficial. And people, I mean, we all know that human beings innately are, they just love to talk about themselves.
I do.
So if you give them an opportunity to do that, you just learn so much. Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you this morning. I'm glad that Tammy suggested we have a chat. I haven't seen you at any of her Tammy's table sessions yet. I hope to get an opportunity to meet you when this is the old COVID is all done and dusted. I think there's a lot of synergy with what you do, and certainly with what I do as well, in terms of the general underlying foundation is communication. I think that's what people lack. So again, Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank
My
you for having
name,
me on.
it's absolute pleasure. My name is Con. I am the Conversationalist. Stay safe, stay positive, and most importantly, stay connected. Bye for now.